right, everybody, welcome back to Whiteboard Finance. We got my buddy Will Motivation in the house. We got two Buckeyes. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, as you guys know. Will is from Columbus, so it's nice to come down a little bit, a couple of degrees warmer, believe it or not. So only a 2-hour car drive got me over here with this real estate living legend.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, just introduce yourself for people that don't know you and your story.
Sure. So my name is Will Moss, but I go by Will Motivation on YouTube. I'm actually, like you said, from Columbus, Ohio. I started doing YouTube when, I'm a car fanatic. So my first YouTube videos were like my Mustang, me modifying it, just little stuff. I didn't have any trajectory with my channel, but I wanted to one day get a Lamborghini, and I wanted to document it on YouTube to kind of share with people, and that's part of my way of justifying it. But the other part of justifying buying a Lambo was I got into real estate investing. Okay. And so once I started talking about how I bought the Lamborghini, and I started touching on entrepreneurship and also touching on investing in real estate, that topic seemed to start to take off. So that's sort of the basis of my YouTube channel.
Awesome, great. So the main reason why I decided to come down here and talk to Will is because he speaks what he does. So he just doesn't just walk the walk, or excuse me, talk the talk, he walks the walk as well. So how long have you been investing in real estate at this point?
So if not including my first home that I purchased, that did turn out to be a real estate investment, I've been investing since 2010. Okay. So about 8 years.
Great. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for people that are beginners or interested in real estate investing, what is your number one tip to those people? How do you recommend beginners or people that have no clue how to get started or don't have any experience, how do you recommend for them to get started?
So getting started investing in real estate, probably the number one tip would be for the average person, right? Because I think there's people that are excited and gung-ho about jumping into investing in real estate and they don't even have their first house yet. Okay. So usually I recommend that people look at buying where they live as a starting point, and buying at a good price and as a good investment, so that you buy a single family home or whatever it might be, or maybe a duplex, and it turns into something that can rise in value and rise in equity. That can be a springboard into all of that energy people have about jumping into investing in real estate, but owning your first property and then leveraging that, because that's really how I got into investing in real estate. Now, if it's to answer that question for people that may already have their first home, how do they get started investing in real estate? The next step is, and this is what I did, speaking of walking the walk, I started researching and studying what successful real estate investors do and what their stories were. I bought books. My number one go-to book is The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Okay. And just studying real estate, studying success stories, and then applying that to your own situation.
Okay, so kind of like a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a mentality. Right. Yeah, mimic other successful people. Great.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, very good. So in terms of, we talked about how to get started. What about running the business? What are some things that people may not know about once they own that first property? Everyone sees the glitz and glamour of being a landlord. What are some horror stories?
So that's an interesting question, because when I first started getting into investing in real estate, so I worked a corporate job for like 10 years. Okay. So I was a software engineer for 10 years, working at AT&T, and I had some buddies that came out of college and they had a little bit more hustle than I did, at least on that kind of thing. So they got started investing in real estate, and I always look at them and say, man, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to be dealing with those problems that you guys are talking about, fixing up no houses. I don't want to be involved in that, right? So that was my mind frame, but really, once I started my own business and got out as an entrepreneur in the software world and the online.com world, and I started running that business for some years, I got more comfortable with dealing with customers, dealing with clients, dealing with problems, solving the problems, looking at numbers. And then when it came time and I saw the opportunity in real estate, I was able to apply the business sense that I gained to being a landlord, to being an investment, real estate investor. And so some of the things that people need to know is numbers, man. Yep. Numbers. You can't have a good real estate investment if you don't know how to do numbers. And it's not that they're complicated. It's basic subtraction, addition, multiplication, division. Knowing percentages and things of that nature. So knowing numbers and not being afraid to deal with customers and clients.
Okay. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they talk about systematizing their business. How do I make my life easier once I get this business rolling? What are some ways that you've systematized your property management group or landlordship, if you will?
Man, that's a great question. That's a really, really good question. So I had sort of a strategic advantage because my background is in software engineering. So I was looking for, when I first started investing in real estate, I used spreadsheets. So I would plug in addresses and numbers related to different properties. But once I started getting beyond 10 properties, and I had work related to those different properties like rehab, I had customers, I had contracts and all this kind of thing. So my strategic advantage was my software background. I built a system. I built a property management system. Where I did invoicing based off a system. I email my tenants every month with their invoice. They get a receipt. I automated all of that.
Smart.
And so to answer your question, I automated everything and I put everything online and tenants can go do everything from a service request to pay online payments for their rent. And all of that kind of thing based off of the software that I built.
So it's kind of all in the cloud. They don't really have to call you at 2 a.m. when they got a leaky faucet or a clogged toilet.
And I had help too. So one of the advantages I had being an entrepreneur is I had staff. So I had an executive assistant, and so she would handle some of those calls when I couldn't. You know what I mean? So I used whatever I had at my whatever resources I had at my fingertips. So for the average person, it might not be that you have a staff member that can handle it, but it might be your mom. It might be your cousin, or it might be your brother or sister that has a whole bunch of free time on their hands, but they're good at dealing with people.
Absolutely.
So you might bring them in and say, hey, I'll give you 5% of the rent every month. You handle the phone calls for me, and then build a list of contractors to handle whatever comes up.
And that way they have a little bit of skin in the game, and they have your success in mind as well, because they're getting that percentage.
Exactly.
That's very smart. So how has becoming an entrepreneur, comparing the 9-to-5 corporate gig for 10 years to becoming an entrepreneur, how has that changed your life?
Oh man.
For the better or for worse?
Oh, for the better, for sure. For the better, for sure. It's just that I think so many things passed through my mind that if I had kept on the corporate route, what my life might look like versus going and becoming an entrepreneur and what my life looks like now. I basically followed my passion and followed my dreams. And there was no guarantee. So a lot of that gets blurred by the hustle and the fact that I'm not focusing so much on a Lambo as I am focusing on survival.
Well said.
So I work a lot, but I come to find out, that I have that. It's sort of like in my DNA. I'm a hustler. I work. I'm not afraid to try new things. But if I stayed the corporate route, I have no doubt that I would have been successful climbing the corporate ladder, and I almost went to work for Microsoft. There's a lot of different opportunities I've had in the corporate space, and I would have probably done well, but there's freedom with entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And even though like a lot of people think freedom and they're like thinking being on a beach, but sometimes it's just freedom of choosing what you want to work on.
Absolutely.
Because you have to work, you got to pay your bills, but sometimes it's just the freedom to decide, I'm going to focus my energy and efforts on what I'm good at and what I think I can be successful with.
Yeah, that's well said. And those become almost like passion projects rather than being work themselves. So as you're working, like we're both hustling. He's got his channel, I got my channel. We've been putting out content for 2-3 years combined now at this point. But to me, YouTube doesn't feel like work because I like doing it. So it's very well said. So ultimately, you got a couple kids. I saw in your videos, a couple kids. You're a father. How has that affected, taking risks and buying that next property or things like that?
Man, that's a great question as well, man. The family sacrifice. So, it did affect. So it slowed me down at the beginning. So when I was in my corporate job, I had 2 little kids. I was married at the time, and So part of me, if I was single and wasn't married, I probably would have left my job really quick.
Yeah.
But when I had the family, it was like, you know what? Whatever I decide to do is going to affect them.
That stability.
Yeah, they needed that stability, and so it slowed me down at the beginning. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know if you watch Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah,
and he's like, you know, this is just who I am, you know? And so for me, it was like, I can't sacrifice myself completely because then I'll be no good to anybody,
That's
if
right.
I'm unhappy, right?
That's right.
So it was that and making that decision to jump out, even though we were kind of all at risk. But, you know, at the end of the day, I had my family behind me. Not financially, you know, nobody was like driving Lambos or anything back then, but I had the support, you know, and I knew I wasn't going to be homeless at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I was going to work my butt off. But there's serious things to consider. But at the same time, you gotta be confident in yourself. You've got to build up your own skill set where you know how to do something and do it well, and then just go based off of that, and then go hard.
Okay.
So yeah, that kind of at the end of the day was like, I don't want to look backwards and regret. So, you know, I had to jump out, man.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about regret. So if you would have went, you know, let's call it, you would have went the corporate gig, you're climbing the corporate ladder, you know, everything's stable, everything's good. You know, talk to people, because my audience is a little bit younger. I can see the demographics based on YouTube stats, and a lot of them are, you know, late teens, early mid 20s. Let's talk about, you know, regret. You know, a lot of these people, they may not realize, like, hey, you know, I want the stability, but they're going to wake up tomorrow and be 55 years old.
Right.
You know,
right.
Let's talk a little bit about, you know, how entrepreneurship has kind of set you free in a way.
Yeah, man, because if I had not have taken the entrepreneurship route, I would have regretted it. You know, it's just in my blood, it's in my DNA. My grandfather was an independent landscaper, and he quietly did millions.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody in the family even knew.
That's
you know, and he was quietly down there in Florida with the nursery in his backyard, and he paid off everything when he left. You know, so it's just kind of in my DNA, man, and I would have regretted not taking that chance. And the thing is, we can get comfortable, you know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes when you're comfortable, you don't grow.
That's right.
Right.
Well
so you know what I mean? So you just can't be scared, but at the same time, I don't recommend that people like just jump out based on energy and gung ho.
Yeah.
You got to jump out based on what you know, what you've studied, what skills you have, what proof of concept you've done for whatever business. So like, for example, if you're getting into real estate or you're getting into investing in the stock market, what success have you demonstrated, like on the side, just on the part-time? Build up that success on the side until it turns into something. So like at the time when I quit my job, I was only making about $9,000 on the side in a year, which is not enough to carry. You know, I was making $90,000 on the corporate side.
Yeah.
But I knew I had proof of concept. So I knew if I put all of my energy into that business that was making $9,000, maybe I could turn it into $90,000 or more. And there was no limit. And where in my corporate job, there was a limit, because I went to my boss and I said, we're doing, you know, your annual review, and you see if you're going to get a raise and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so my trajectory here is I want to be a distinguished member of the technical staff, which is like the highest level.
Yep.
And he looked at me, he said, I don't see it. So I'm like, wow, this guy is telling me he doesn't see my potential, and I know I have the potential, but he's telling me he doesn't see it, and he's not giving me a path to get there.
That's right.
So it was like, okay, I want to be into something where I have no limits.
You had that glass ceiling over your head in the corporate gig.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, and that's full of regret.
So what Will, very well said, by the way. So what Will is talking about by proving the concept on the side is what we call in startup terms your minimal viable product. So your MVP. So if you figure out, okay, I'm going to start this course, or I'm going to start investing in real estate, you have to have a minimum viable product to where you know yourself, like, hey, if I don't just dip my toe in, if I go gung-ho and dive off the deep end, I already know that it's a proven concept.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you guys know why we're probably sitting here like this in front of the camera. We're in Columbus, Ohio in the middle of November, so in the middle of a garage. So, so if we look a little bit tense on camera, that's why. But it's all, he's dropping fire, so it's good information.
Appreciate it.
So with that being said, what books or what resources other than the millionaire real estate investor? That's Gary Keller, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, Gary Keller is the guy that created Keller Williams. So if you guys see the big red and white KW, that's him. It's a great book. I recommend it. It's in my personal library as well. What other resources do you recommend for someone looking to get started?
Man, that's a good question, and I'm glad you said resources instead of sticking to books, because honestly, man, that is one of the only like full books that I read from cover to cover. And I actually, I bought the book first, then I found it on audio.
Okay.
And then I listened to it probably 20 times because I'm always
in the Lambo. He was driving in the Lambo listening to it. I'm just messing.
Yeah, that was before. That was about 2010.
That was in the Mustang. My bad. That was in the
Right, that was definitely the Mustang.
That was in the Mustang.
So, but I listened to that thing probably more than 20 times from end to end. Yeah. It was such a good read or listen, and it was getting me comfortable with investing in real estate. So that was the number one book that I recommend. But then I bought other books, but I didn't read them end to end like that. I would reference different parts of the books. Like, for example, Scott McGilvory, the guy who used to have income property show on HGTV.
Okay.
I bought his books. He's got one on flipping. He's got one on buy and hold. And I would just use pieces of those books when I needed them. But I got my foundation from the Millionaire Real Estate Investor and going online and studying the market. And I think my entrepreneurial background and having run a business for several years helped me recognize just numbers, man. Yeah. And then looking at other case studies of successful people. So I had YouTube, I had websites that were out there and helping me understand different concepts. But more than anything, man, it was experience.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. For you guys, for beginners out there, Will is also going to have a resource coming out here soon. I don't know much about it, but you mentioned it when we were talking earlier. Do you want to give a quick shout out on that?
Sure. So it's learn.willmotivation.com. It's going to be an online course helping people learn how to make money investing in real estate, primarily through flips and then also through buy and hold rental properties.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So we're starting to wrap up here. I don't want to keep this too long, but it's a great conversation. I know this is very high level for you guys, but it's important. This was more of an introduction to Will just because he's got all the good stuff on his channel. It's way more than I can do right now. It's just a quick interview. But just ultimately to wrap things up, what's the biggest reason that people, they have all these big ambitions, they have all these big goals, but they just can't get up and do it? What's the one thing holding them back, and what do you recommend for those kinds of people?
I think if it's the one big thing, man, it's actually just going out and doing it. But a lot of times people are paralyzed because they don't feel like they have enough knowledge. Okay. Right? But even with a little bit of knowledge, like before I got into investing in real estate, I didn't have any real estate background, no educational background,
family,
none of that. No, my family wasn't doing it. No.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thing that made me move forward was that I knew if I sat on my butt and used any excuse, then I would be sitting on my butt. So I just had to start taking steps towards what I wanted, which was learning how to buy more and more real estate and make money with that real estate. And I just had to start moving in that direction. Yep. So, and nobody was pushing me, I had to push myself. For most people, I think the answer is knowledge, that they feel like they don't have the knowledge, but you can't let that stop you. You actually have to go out and get the knowledge and just start trying things and talking to people that are successful, that are out there doing it.
Very good. Well said. All right, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the channel, man. Will Motivation. I'll link his channel link down in the description below. Check him out and subscribe. He's got a lot of good stuff in there. Real live stuff, not just this, not just mouth talk. So thank you so much for coming on the channel, man.
Hey, thank you, man, and let's do it for my channel.
Absolutely. Sounds good, brother. Thank you. All right, Will. Great video, man. I'll talk to you later.